dates and events presented in this video are from the members' best recollection and may not be fully accurate. This video is intended for entertainment purposes only. Always consult with your local union about your rights and duties at your workplace. The opinions shared on this video are our own and do not necessarily represent my employer's positions, strategies, or opinions. All views shared are protected under the National Labor Relations Act.
Hey, brothers and sisters. Welcome to the next episode of the Biweekly Grievance. I'm going to have a series of videos coming out daily over the next few days as to try to get on top of everything that is going on and transpiring since the TAs were announced. As you all know, yesterday the TAs were released electronically for everybody to start viewing. I'm sorting through that stuff as we speak, and we'll be releasing a show tomorrow. And I have some exciting news. Tyler Binder has agreed to come on and have a roundtable discussion with me about the tentative agreements. For those of you who know him, know that he's very famous for his 2018 whiteboard video describing why the 2018 contract sucked. And he hit the nail on the head. It was viewed over 100,000 times, and it was very well done. So as a trusted source and somebody who has had success in analyzing contracts, I reached out to him to see if he would come on to the Biweekly Grievance and do a show with me. So if all goes well, tomorrow on Friday, I will also be releasing another video of me and Tyler discussing the contract proposals, or tentative agreements, excuse me. This episode is featuring our friend Teddy Ostro, host of The UPSurge. He is a professional media person who has relentlessly covered this year of the Teamsters and the fight for our contract. He has been very objective in his writings. He has brought to light a lot of important issues, and he's a voice of reason on a lot of levels. I trust him as a person and as a journalist, and I couldn't think of a better person to come on and help me with this episode to kind of talk about his perspective as a media person with everything that's going on and dig a little bit into the reactions that we're getting across the board from our members. That being said, guys, this interview is well done. And I am excited to present it to you, but my personal message to each and every one of you is this. A lot of you are very passionate. A lot of you have been inspired and have been, the charisma of Sean O'Brien over this year has really hooked the members, hook, line, and sinker, as they would say. And we all became very awake and very aware, and we have been pushed around and bullied by this company for so long and had poor leadership that gave a lot of concessions to the company. So there's a lot of built up rage. And I think that people need to take a deep breath. And I'm not here to tell people how to vote on the contract or how to feel about the contract. I'm just asking for us as Teamsters to, one, not fight amongst each other. You have the right to your opinion, but we need to not fight about this. And two, it's very important that everybody reads the tentative agreements. They've been released yesterday, and everybody needs to read through it. I would encourage you to go through the TAs, make a pros and cons list, and also have in mind what your top 2 or 3 important issues are in the contract, and then make an educated decision as to whether this contract works for you or not. I think it's too early for a vote yes or a vote no movement, although I know some people have, even friends of mine have, and I support them in their decision, but I just want to make sure that everybody's educated on the entire contract and not bogged down on one particular issue. I support the part-timers' right to fight for $25 an hour, but I encourage you to look at the history of this in the sense that this is the largest pay raise the part-timers have ever gotten in a single contract. Is it right? Well, that's for you to decide. Is it fair? It's again for you to decide. But it is a significant raise. It is a move in the right direction. And I truly believe that Sean and Fred can't fix everything in one contract. So it may take 2 or 3 contracts to finally get the part-timers up to exactly what they're worth. I think this was a big step forward. And again, this is not to discourage you from your beliefs or your motivations towards this contract. I'm just urging people to take a breath, read the entire contract, and decide whether this is a good agreement or not. Again, I'm not going to tell you how I'm going to vote, and I'm not going to tell you how to vote, but I will say that I do feel like this is one of the best contracts I've ever seen in my 23 years with this company. We have made significant gains on some major issues. Is there some issues that I feel like we missed the mark on it? Yeah, I do. As somebody that has suffered the wrath of this company over the last year with being terminated, and to see little progress in resolving the issue of harassment and the way we're treated at work on a daily basis, I personally would forego any pay raise if it ensured a environment where we didn't feel threatened or harassed by our management team on a daily basis. That, from somebody who's been through what I have, means more to me than the extra money that we're getting. The money's nice, but as far as I'm concerned, we're now going to be well paid to put up with even more bullshit from this company. And it doesn't mean I'm voting no or voting yes. I'm just telling you that when it comes to that, that's my feeling on that. And that's what I expect you guys to do, is go through, make a pros and cons list, and make an educated thing. And keep in mind, nobody gets everything they want in a contract. Usually when both sides walk away pissing and moaning, it's a good contract because they both got something, but they didn't get everything they wanted. We're never going to get everything we want in one contract. The problem is we're so far behind because of everything we went through over the last 20 years that, and Sean has such charisma, and really the membership woke up. They responded to Sean. They anticipated all this stuff. And I don't think this is a bad mark on Sean because some things didn't get into the contract that we were hoping for. I'm disappointed that some people are looking at this as a failure than the fact that it's negotiations. We're not going to get everything. Would I have taken less in some areas to fix some other areas? Yeah. But, Sean and Fred did something for us at the last convention that the other administration, Hoffa, used against us. He removed the 2/3 rule. I truly believe Sean and Fred want the membership to be empowered and to pick what they think is the best contract for them. And democracy at its best, majority rules. So that's why I urge people to take a deep breath, analyze the tentative agreements, make a pros and cons list, decide what your priorities are, and vote your conscience. That's all I'm asking. Either what's going on social media right now between members, and believe it or not, I know for a fact that the company is behind a lot of this. They're on there egging people on because they want to create a divide. And it's such a passionate thing right now that people are taking the bait. So I would encourage people to mute some of their stuff online until they have a full perspective. And then if you hate it, by all means do it. It's your right and your responsibility as a Teamster to vote on the contract and to have your voices heard. But all the stuff that's come out since Tuesday and nobody had seen the tentative agreements, it's not good, guys. So take a deep breath, vote your conscience. I will support each and every one of you on your decision. And like I said, tomorrow's going to be a big day. Teddy Ostro today and Tyler Binder tomorrow, famous for his whiteboard in 2018. I think there are going to be a couple of great episodes. So stick around, guys, and learn everything you guys can learn. Okay, I appreciate your time. Here's Teddy Ostro. Hey, brothers and sisters, welcome to another episode of the Biweekly Grievance. We have a special guest this week. Everyone knows Teddy Ostro. host of the podcast, The UPSurge. He has been reporting relentlessly on this contract since I met him back in September, and maybe even earlier than that. He's a professional journalist, and he's done a phenomenal job covering it. Teddy, if you could just give us a few quick blurbs about who else you write for and what brought you to the attention of UPS and the Teamsters fight in the campaign.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on, Dan. I'm happy to be here. You do excellent work on this show, and I think it's clearly showing right now because this show's getting a lot of attention. It's getting the attention it deserves. People are tuning in, and you are feeding people the information they need. So thank you for that.
I appreciate that.
So I started the podcast with my co-producer Ruby Walsh earlier this year, in January. We had been planning it before then. I'm, as a journalist, I write and I also do some video stuff. I've done stuff with More Perfect Union. I'm a contributor to The Real News. I write for The Nation, The New Republic, all around, not exclusively on UPS stuff, but because of this, just how important this campaign was, I was like, I'm going to focus on it. And just to talk a little bit about that, Dan, you were one of the first people I really spoke to at length. UPSer, I think one of the first, probably before you was Tony Rosario out of Local 804. But yeah, my first story about UPS was about retaliation at UPS, and I'm sure the listeners of your show know your story well. And you and we met, I believe, in August at a rally for other
September
folks. September 1st September 1st at a rally shortly after the contract campaign had started at UPS. All of these things were funneling into each other, and I didn't know as much as I do now, and I had to say, like, talking to you, talking to other folks, really sparked my interest, and to understand that this whole thing is an onion. We've got institutional history at the Teamsters, history of the labor movement, the implications for the labor movement, the importance of logistics in the economy. And I saw, bad labor reporting, or not even labor reporting, just business reporting throughout time of a big strike is coming, or even a small strike. And we hear, this economic damage is looming. And I said, there's a lot of history. There's clearly a lot of struggles and demands and so much to what's going on. I have to unpack it more at length. And I wanted to cover it almost like other journalists cover, electoral politics, because this is politics, and I'm sure a lot of people are feeling that right now with some of the tensions behind the TA, the excitement behind the TA. All of this is politics. And I wanted to show, people beyond, look, pay attention to the labor movement. The implications here are enormous. So that's what we've been doing over at the UPSurge. And first and foremost, that means talking to the workers themselves.
How has your perception changed from when you were first digging into the information and we met in September and you started doing some reporting on the contract? And it's been a long 11 months of a lot of going on. And I'm just curious, from a professional media person, how that perspective has come along from when you first started looking at the story till what you know now. Here we're facing a tentative agreement.
Man, how has it changed? I think I've really, really understood just the importance as a journalist to dig deep and really understand and do your homework on some of this stuff, because I think, I've made mistakes. I am seeing journalists right now make mistakes in how they're covering this. But over the past 11 months, right, I knew since the beginning that this was incredibly important, and I think that importance just deepened. I understood the gravity of the demands you guys are making, the gravity of the struggles you're dealing with, and the gravity of the institutional changes and the forces, the reform movement, the organizing that went into those changes, whether it's 1997 strike or the 2021 election of Sean O'Brien and Fred Zuckerman, down to this contract campaign and how it will be leveraged for organizing in the future at Amazon. I don't know whether or not I had any big changes besides just having now like a far greater depth of knowledge about it and a greater appreciation for the work that Teamsters are doing, and the work they're going to continue to do, and the value that has for the labor movement more broadly. I just want to say, you know, I'm interested in this in part because I'm a worker. You know, I'm a media worker, and in a way, you know, solidarity comes out of some self-interest, right? Because if we all do better, or if some folks do better, we'll all do better. So that's where I'm coming from, at least in part, you know, solidarity, and care for the labor movement.
So now we're into the thick of it, right? So July's been a very roller coaster month. We seem to make significant gains in the non-economical portion. Then they present the economics and the whole thing falls apart. And there was a real tension as to what was going to happen because people aren't used to this kind of negotiating. And then all of a sudden we get notification that they're going back to the table. And I think most of us were under the impression it was going to come down to the wire and there was going to be lengthy discussions. And I think people are really surprised at how fast on day one, with a week left, that it didn't take 2 or 3 days to come to the best possible scenario, that it only took a few hours and all of a sudden they had a tentative agreement. Now, we all understand they were talking over the last couple of weeks. There's no way that they were completely ignoring each other. Maybe not formal discussions, but they were definitely talking. Mm-hmm. So all of a sudden, you know, both sides declare victory. They have a tentative agreement, and there seems to be a growing tension amongst the ranks about how they feel about this contract. What is your perspective as a professional media person on the support for the Teamsters going through this contract up to the tentative agreements?
Right. Well, I think that there was a lot of support. I think, however, you know, we can often be people who are pro-worker. I'm not afraid to say, as a journalist, I am pro-worker, and that's how I've been covering this, you know, by nature of talking to workers. I think any journalist who tells you their objective is lying to you. But anyway, the mainstream media, I think, has not necessarily been. Maybe they were a little bit more sympathetic than they were in like 1997, for example. But we have mostly been seeing some of the familiar tropes, which is emphasizing economic damage to the economy in the case of a strike rather than economic or labor gain. In the case of winning a solid contract, whether or not it was through a strike or through negotiations and the organizing done for a credible strike threat. Now, like up until this point, it's interesting. I'm trying to get a grasp on like all of the different media perspectives. It seems like there's definitely still that language of strike averted, which sort of places emphasis on still the economic damage. But overall, what we've seen, especially beginning like last year, during the summer when people are dealing with extreme heat, dozens and dozens of people, you know, dropping like flies due to heat stroke, one person even dying in California, is there is sympathy for UPSers. And I think that is a symptom also of a number of broader forces in the labor movement. People are kind of waking up, especially following the pandemic, that they should not be treated how corporations are treating them, that people died during COVID and corporations didn't care, and they made billions and billions of dollars in profits, especially UPS. So will the media, you know, be surprised or you know, will people turn on UPSers if they vote it down? I mean, the media isn't helping by pretty irresponsibly saying that a labor deal was reached when this could still very much be voted down. A strike was not averted. You know, this is not over yet. Some of that is probably misunderstanding. You know, mainstream media doesn't really have labor reporters. They have business reporters who are assigned these stories, who go and they read the corporate press release. They probably just skimmed the union one and they like copy and paste and publish. So it's complicated. You know, I just want to say also, maybe I could address sort of like how I understand the reaction to be, for this TA and how the reporting has been. You know, it's unclear to me right now in this enormous union that you are a part of, what the real opinions are of UPSers. I know the folks who I've spoken to. I've hit up dozens and dozens of people already, and I'm hearing a lot of perspectives. We see perspectives online, but it's not clear a few days after this has come out. One day after the actual language is out, which of the opinions are going to boil it to the top? What are the forces that are going to push UPSers either to vote it up or vote it down? So I just want to state that what I've heard is that there are a lot of people who are cautiously optimistic and that they want to read the contract language. Some of them, y'all have jobs. You need to spend time and really look at it. So that's still being done. And I also heard, a lot of disappointment. And just the feeling that more could have been won. And the feeling that certainly through a strike, more could have been won. It's not my place as a journalist, especially not as a UPSer, to say one thing or another on any of the demands. But I think one thing that hasn't been emphasized enough in the media, and it is the right framing, is that regardless of whether the gains were enough, I won't take a position. I'll follow what the workers have to say, and I'm still learning. Regardless of whether the gains were enough, there were gains. And the only reason why there were gains is because you guys started a contract campaign on August 1st last year, and you fought like hell to raise the stakes, raise expectations, and especially in the past month, organize the hell out of parking lot meetings, practice pickets, just getting people educated, getting people mobilized. And what is really, really unique about this campaign, and may play a part in whether or not this is voted down or voted up, is the Teamsters leadership raised expectations like they have never been before. And you could speak to this, I'm sure, better than I can. Even just announcing the TAs, the wins, as they came along. That raised expectations, and whether or not the expectations were raised too high, such that people might vote it down, we'll have to see. Because, what came out, I know a lot of part-timers are upset. A lot of full-timers and part-timers are not upset. They actually see enormous gains here. It's unclear whether or not which way it will go. And I'll certainly be watching. But the expectations raised and the organizing done, that's the story here for media. And unfortunately, I don't know if all of that is being captured.
Yeah, I definitely think, and this is just my perspective, and I certainly am never going to coach anybody to vote yes or no. I think people should vote their conscience. And I think that ultimately, Sean and Fred, that's what they wanted when they removed the 2/3 rule. So that being said, I think that the problem is that over the years, there's been such browbeating and poor leadership at the union that we have been taken advantage for so long, and apathy set in, right? And then here comes Sean, the shiny white knight, and he has such charisma that he really won over the members that he was going to go and take on this company. And I still stand by Sean and Fred. I think they're excellent leaders. I think they've done a phenomenal job. I do feel like this is the best contract we have ever gotten with the amount of gains that we got. And I do think that a lot of the upset comes from expectations. I think that he was so good at rallying the troops and so good at the charisma and getting people to believe in them that people forget that negotiations don't go. Usually both sides walk away with some sort of a gripe, and that's a good contract because they didn't get everything they wanted. We didn't get everything we wanted. But I think the expectation was all these wrongs were going to be corrected in one contract, and that just didn't happen. Now, right. Individual groups within, so the drivers, their gripe, I think, is going to be that the 8-hour request in the 9.5 language wasn't strengthened enough. Will that be enough to vote down the contract? I don't know. I don't think so. I think we need to hold the company accountable for the language that we have and be more accountable as a union to enforce those rules. And I think the inside workers feel slighted because, they got air conditioning in the trucks, although be it maybe not the strongest language because it doesn't really define the timeline for them to air condition the fleet. And the buildings are still ovens, And other than more fans, they didn't really address that issue in the work environment and the thing. So I just think that individual people they have expectations of what they wanted fixed. And if their issues weren't specifically addressed, they're up in arms about it. And they're not looking at the totality of what we gained in this contract and the fact that the major gains we made in this contract are only going to make it easier to get more gains in the next contract. We're never going to get it all in one contract. So it's members need to vote their conscience, and I support that democratic process. And if we vote it down, they'll go back to the table and see what they can fix. But I'm worried about the media backlash if this gets voted down, because UPS is going to spend millions promoting the fact of how much we got. And they're not going to talk about specifics. They're going to talk about dollars. They're going to talk about how much we're going to make in the new contract. And I just hope that it doesn't backfire and turn into a negative thing for the workers who deserve the stuff that they're asking for.
I mean, I think that the media is likely going to have a lot of that anyway, and we've already seen that. I think, like I said, I feel like some of us can be in echo chambers about some of like the positive media spin about UPS, but most of the biggest media out there, business press, they're scaremongering, and they're not necessarily going to be asking the right questions. They're not going to be even asking questions to UPSers. Maybe they'll ask like that funny clip last year during the preemptively broken rail strike. Here to talk about the news is the executive from Bank of America. Right? So that's what we're dealing with. That's the reality of corporate media, corporate-owned media. Yeah. I think, when I look at this, I think you're right to sort of you bring a lot of historical perspective, given you've been at UPS for 23 years. A lot of folks, especially part-timers, the turnover is so high. A lot of these people are super new. So I understand their perspectives. I understand the perspectives of people like you. Definitely as a journalist, as an outsider, I try to look at historical perspective. 1997, which is sort of, I don't want to say mythologized. I mean, it was clearly like a huge wins there, but there were also concessions. One huge one, you guys had 3-year collective bargaining agreements up till that point. Then it was changed to 5, and that deleverages the bargaining unit. It does, to be, stick with something for 5 years rather than 3 years. There's a lot of rhetoric out there. I think the expectations were really raised very high, as you said. And I think there's a valid point here that a lot of people will share, whether it's quietly or whether it's organizing around a vote no movement, which is, could we have won more with a strike? Could our leadership have fought more? And that's up for the UPSers to decide. You guys may still go on strike. And I'm here to watch whether or not that actually becomes a burgeoning, resonant movement within the ranks, and that's unclear to me right now.
I have one final question for you. I want you to take off your press hat for a second and just be Teddy Ostro. Now, my question to you is, from an outside non-Teamster, non-UPSer, and from a personal perspective, because I have a lot of respect for your perspective on things, what advice would you give to the members about digesting this and coming to a decision on whether they're going to vote yes or no?
I don't know if I can take off my press hat, Dan. Some of us just have, the positionality we're born with, or we develop in our careers. If I were to give any advice, I would just say, talk to your fellow Teamsters. That's all. That's if I'm even warranted to give that advice. I don't want to say anything on the contract from, on one way or another. If you just ask me, what do I think workers deserve? They probably deserve more than what's in the contract, what's in the TA. It's not up for me to decide what you guys are going to settle on. I think workers across the country deserve more and more and more. And that's the point of bargaining, and that's the point of fighting, and that's the point of, having a credible strike threat. I hope people just talk, and I hope people are proud of themselves for how far they've already come, because you guys showed the world, showed the country already that if you fight, you can win. Now, the degree of that win right now, it's up for you guys to decide, and we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah, I'm as a proud Teamster, I can't say that enough, that we have a democratic process. I urge people to take a deep breath, analyze the TA, and make a decision as to, and I said this before, make a pros and cons list of what you like and don't like about the contract. And also make a list of your top 3 things that are the most important to you. And does that tentative agreement meet your needs? And you know, because it is individual. I mean, this is a democratic process. Nobody's going to like everything in the contract. Nobody's going to get everything in the contract. But ultimately, we've already won a significant contract, and probably one of the best contracts I've ever seen as far as the number of gains that we've made, maybe not necessarily addressing certain issues. And that is up to the individual member to decide for themselves. Teddy, I appreciate you coming on and giving your perspective as a professional media. You are a true professional. I encourage people to support the UPSurge. I will link a way to support his show on Patreon. I am a monthly contributor to his show because I believe in his work. I believe in the things that he does. I think he brings a legitimate view to the media perspective of what's going on, and I encourage you all to support him as well. Thank you for your time, Teddy.
Thanks so much for all your support, Dan, and all the really hard and important work that you do for your fellow Teamsters and just workers around the country.
All right. Thank you, Teddy.